I hang out here and really enjoy this place. And I welcome everybody to come out and enjoy this place, whether you like to garden or just want a really beautiful place to hang out. If you want to learn about gardening, if you want to meet other people, it's a great place to hang out or gather. Recently, we partnered with NACA, Native Americans for Community Action, and we talked about the idea of creating a gathering center, and they made that happen with a little grant, and included in the gathering center is an outdoor kitchen. And so we conspired with Jonah to build this traditional outdoor oven so that not only now we can grow food, but we can share those stories and knowledge about how those foods are prepared and in traditional ways, and share that knowledge as well.
Hello everyone, my name is Jonah Hill. I'm from the village of Kikutsmovi out in Hopi. I'm Hopi and Kwitsan, part of the Tobacco Rabbit Clan. It's very good to have everyone here.
This project is very fun because this community bread oven build is something that's it's usually a community effort. You know, it's a family effort. So when we're building these out in the Pueblos, you know, everybody comes together to make this happen, and that's kind of uniting everybody. You know, so that's what we're here for, is to unite and to learn. This is going to be a kind of a hybrid oven. For one thing, we're not using traditional sandstone as the base. You know. We're using other materials, but with this project, it's really fun because there's ways to determine what you need material-wise, you know?
Yeah, so this jar is Colton Community Garden soil. And what I did was I dug a foot into the ground and gathered as much soil as I could fill into here. You want to do about 3/4 of it full, you know? And then add water and shake it up. And this has been sitting for about, 2 weeks now.
Okay.
So what's happening and what you're looking for is sediment, you know, so everything's settling. So clay is the heaviest. So usually you'll see, if there's clay content in here, you'll see like a light layer down there. So this is pure soil from the Colton garden. Awesome soil. You can garden with this. There's no clay in there. No, this is a bad thing for our purposes, because you want a certain amount of clay in the soil naturally, so you don't have to go out and get it. Usually when you're doing these projects, if your soil conditions aren't optimal, you're going to bring something in. So in the back of your mind, you're thinking you have to know where things are around. You know, you become aware of your environment. You become aware of like what's happening with the nature, you know. So the more you can become aware of that, the easier it is for you to collect the materials that you need. So this materials came pretty far. You know, all of this clay and everything was gathered up in a loop area. So you're taking the time to go gather it, you know, and you're taking the time to bring it back. So all of that energy, you're taking the time to clean it. All that energy is going into the material itself. And as a community effort, that's going into the oven. So everything trickles down in a positive way. You know, that's what you really want to see. So good way to test your soil if you want to do these at home is do the basic soil test, but look for a different color layer at the bottom. And depending on the amount in that layer, determines how well your soil is going to react to this process. You don't have to add anything, or maybe you do. So in this case, we needed everything.
Okay.
We'll go over here to the base, and I'll explain the base a little bit.
So like I was saying before, it's a traditional style oven, but it's kind of a hybrid oven. And I was talking about utilizing the resources around you. So the base is actually recycled sidewalk. So it's a term, they have a term for it called urbanite. So it's something that would probably generally go into the landfill, you know.
Wow.
So it makes a really good base. Each piece is about 4 inches thick, and depending on how wide it is, you know, it's got some heft to it. So one side's flat, one side's rough. It's got everything you need in there already. Basically, you're working with concrete blocks at this point. So what we did was we did a dry stack. So everything is basically held together with gravity being so heavy. So what we did was we determined the area that we wanted. We laid out the stones into these courses. So it's 4, 8, 12, 16. It's 16 inches high from the bottom to the top.
Step one is we're going to fill this in. So Gonna be basically three mixes we're gonna do. The very first mix we're gonna do is gonna be a 1-to-1 clay and sand plus straw, and that's what we're gonna use in order to kind of fill this in and get it level. Then once we get that going, we'll put in our fire bricks into a sand bed and then set them, and then from there we'll build our dome. Right now what we're doing is just gonna mix this all together using our feet, you know, and we do it all on tarps because at the end it's gonna be easier to lift up the corners of the tarp and flip it, you know. And if you need to move it, it's always easier that way instead of shoveling it, which it's gonna be clay, so it's gonna be heavy, you know. But if you utilize your tarp correctly and enough manpower, you can easily just roll it, you know. Right now you get your material, place it in the middle of the tarp, and then kind of make like a little volcano in there. And what we're gonna do is just basically add water to it. And who wants to get dirty?
I do.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is just mix it with our feet. You know, we're gonna be dancing, you're gonna be grinding it in there. Somebody have a water handy, you know. If it's escaping, you're just gonna lift the edges of the tarp up and push it back.
Try and keep the volcano.
Yeah, we'll just try to keep it in this area so we can not have to worry about it spreading out. So then it's always fun to have somebody extra just pouring water in there as they're going.
This is good.
Get most of the material how it is right now, you know, it's kind of moist. You don't add too much water in the beginning. So this looks really good, and now you can start adding your straw and mixing it in, because the straw will absorb some of the moisture. And at the beginning, you don't want to use a lot of straw too, because it can get, if you use too much straw, it'll make the material fall apart. So we'll just do that and then mix it in there. So in the very beginning, when you're making your mixes, start off with just like a good bundle of straw, not a whole lot. Because you can always add more straw, you can't take it out. And then if you do add too much, you're just going to have to add more clay and sand, you know, so you're just making your mix bigger and bigger. And if you're doing this yourself, you know, you want to kind of think about how much you're going to be able to lift.
It feels so good. It feels really good.
Growing up, you know, we help do this. It's like a community family effort, you know. So just kind of growing up, that's something you're doing. And it's really good to be able to use that ancestral knowledge to pass it on and to teach other people. And what's really cool about this as an example is as we're building these, we're utilizing the materials that are there. This is a cob, it's called. You know, this right here is what's known as a cob. The whole material is a cob, but traditionally they say this chunk of mud here is what's called a cob. Grab your big cob and then just smash it down like that. Just throw it down. Yeah, see how it's spreading out? Then start in the middle. Yeah, we're gonna go in the middle and just kind of, because at the end we can spread it, you know? It seems like a lot of the participants are people who are interested in coming to learn this so that they can go spread it to their communities. To me, that's a good thing because it makes me confident that my level of instruction is there, that they can go home and feel confident doing this themselves.
Honestly, I think the favorite part to me has been just the opportunity to come together as a community. I am really enjoying seeing everyone working together, and it's kind of been a real sense of family community effort, so that to me has been my favorite part.
Right now we got our base layer, we got it filled, we got our first clay layer going. So now is the time to kind of determine how big your volume is going to be based upon the size of your base. So the first layer, so the sand layer, the sand dome is going to be on top of this once we embed them and make it level. And then the sand dome will go on there, and then the first layer is going to be about that thick. The pure clay, you know. So we have to think about that much room, and then the layer outside of that is almost double that, so about that thick. So if we keep our bricks here, we'll have enough room to mess around with on the outside. So that looks good there.
So like a foot or like 8 inches?
Yeah. So we'll do about maybe like 1.5 inches, 2 inches for the first layer, and then about 3 or 4 inches for the other layer.
Okay.
Yeah. So now, since we have this kind of there, we'll start building a wall like that, exactly like that. Yes. So let's get together and then we can start getting these bricks down, and what we want to do is get as close to the corners as we can. Part of it then. So next thing is we're gonna get another layer, mix of clay and sand, no straw.
Good stuff.
A small mix, because all we're gonna do is just make sure enough that we're gonna fill in all of these little lips, you know?
Lips,
yeah. So that way we'll know that when we're sticking in our bread, it's not gonna go like that, you know. We just want to make sure we go straight in there. And so now we can get a mix going. See how it's like spreading out like that? That's what we want, is just to make it nice and dragging it around, you know. And just trying to, what we're basically doing is filling in the cracks and then making it so we don't have those big lips sticking up. Yeah, that looks really good, guys. And then at the very, very end, we'll just get like a lot of water and just kind of go through and make sure it's like nice and flat. And then what you do is you make a ball and then you drop it in there. See, it didn't really spread out. With this one here, see if it does it. See, you kind of crumble apart. See, that means there's too much dry material in there. So as this dries, it's gonna slowly start crumbling apart, you know? Okay, so here we've got our base built, we've got our layers down. Underneath here is our fire bricks. So right now at this point, we've marked off this square here, and we're using this sand material, which is basically pure sand and a little bit of clay, to make a a dome. And then this dome is going to determine the interior volume of the oven. So as big as this is going to be, that's how much space is going to be inside of the oven. So right now we've determined that we're going to maybe have it this big. So we're just mixing the material and we're just going to make a big dome. And then on the top of that dome, we're going to start coiling our clay and sand mixture to make the very first insulating layer of the oven. And then after that, we'll make another layer that's going to insulate that layer. So, but for now, right now, we're just making the volume of the oven. So at this point, it's going to be how big the interior is going to be. So as big as you want, as small as you want.
It was almost like building a sandcastle. Just keep adding to it and shaping it.
We're ready to do the coil, but we're going to need a couple of buckets of that sand, sifted sand. So as we're building the coils, you'll throw the sand on there and that'll help it to not stick to this layer. Right now we're going to start out probably a coil about maybe, we want it to be about that thick, all the way across here, you know, so basically it's going to be like that, you know. See how it's not sticking to that sand? You're going to use your hands as a form and as a kind of a trowel. So as you're putting it on there, you're kind of going like that and then just kind of pushing it down.
So some people were making the cobs, and then some people were putting the cobs around the sand dome that we had made. You know, starting with the bottom layer, making a full circle, making sure the seams were worked into one another, and that the edges stayed consistent around the entire sand dome, so that one part wasn't thinner, one wasn't thicker. Then we'd work our way up, making sure that all the seams squished into one another, and use our hands as trowels, which was really satisfying to use your hands in that way, until we got to the top.
The top, they took those rolls and almost tucked them in at the top so that they would make a seal at the top. Rather than pushing each of those cobs against and downward as you went up, the last process was kind of curving it in on itself.
We're going to add on the hole so that the next layer can stick. So we're not going to go really deep, you know, just like that. And that just makes it easier for the next layer to go. And then what we're doing here is we're making sure that the oven or the clay layers are connecting vertically. And the next layer we're going to add straw, and then the straw adds support horizontally. So we're basically making sure that we have a really, really strong connection this way and this way. So looks good. Yeah, this looks good. Get a chance, come walk around it and look. You'll see like there's a few cracks starting to form. So you'll see there. That happens, you know, that's a natural part of it. Clay is going to want to like dry out, you know, so it's really good that I'm kind of glad we had a little bit of downtime from the time we ended last night to now, because it gives at least 15 hours for it to sit there, you know. And if we go over to the oven, you'll notice that it's starting to crack, you know, so that's the wind. The elements right now are causing the clay to start forming cracks, which happens. So right now what we're doing is we're getting some of the finely sifted clay here and water, and what we're going to do is we're going to make like a little slurry and start patching these cracks up. So you get your clay, then you just mix some water in there.
mix it up by hand. You know, it's gonna be really wet, but that's helpful for helping to spread it. You know, so we're just making like a really light slurry in here. It's like feels really grainy, you know. And if you have the finely sifted clay, it helps a lot, because the finer particles will sink into these cracks and seal it, you know. So we're just getting a really nice, see how that is? It's like a really wet. So it's gonna be getting, and see how it's filling in those cracks there? It's gonna happen regardless, but the more you can stand here and fill them in as it's drying, it helps to seal these and bind them together more. So what we're gonna do is you're just gonna go around and kind of do that. And see, the little dimples aren't really being impacted by it either. They're kind of sinking in there, so that's a good sign, because we want those to stay there for the next layer to stick. Pretty much over the whole thing, but if you see any of the really big cracks there, try to massage it in there. Yeah, so I'm pretty much focus on the bigger cracks where you see them, and then start doing the rest of it. So yeah, like around here. See over here, you'll notice it's happening more because the sun's angled this way. So after we do this, we'll throw a cover on it just to kind of keep it moist, and we don't want it to crack too much. You know, this is a good sign because the clay's drying pretty quick. You know, so it's just kind of that maintenance you have to do as it's happening. You know, so this whole process involves observing your oven. You know, observing your structure, seeing what's happening, making sure you're catching things like that before they get worse. You know, if we didn't do anything, tomorrow we come by, this thing would probably be broken apart. You know, just because it's drying so fast. So. So that's what we're doing now. It's just kind of just the basic maintenance that you have to do every time. Now let's get some mud mixed, and then start applying the layer. And the next layer is going to be a lot thicker. It's going to be a lot heavier. What we're looking for is not to make a lot of really thick layers at first. You know, we want to keep our layers kind of thin so that we're keeping control of the thickness, and we're keeping control that it's going to be the same width. You know, so like I said, as we were stacking it up yesterday, we didn't want it pushing in. We didn't want the clay to be pushed into the oven. You know, like as we're rolling, we wanted the clay to be pushed down. So what we're doing is we're making a big like a shelf each time. So at the very beginning, that one, and then the next layer is building another shelf that layer is coming on. So what we're trying to do is keeping that same shelf thickness all the way to the top, and then we did the same thing where it's the same thickness, and then we gathered it in. So here is the current batch of cob. We performed a drop test on this one, and if we earlier we did a test, and when we dropped it, it started out like that, ended up about like that. So right now we did a drop test, and it started out like that and ended right here. So we're about 3/4 of the form is staying structurally sound. You know, so this is a good mix, and we're ready to start putting it onto the oven now. And when we break it apart, see how all those fibers are sticking together? That's what we're looking for, is all of those little fibers to be binding inside of there. So that's a good, see, like that? Nothing really dry in there, you know, it's a nice moist, we can mold it. So I guess right now we're ready to start doing the layer. We got our mixed here, and what we're gonna do is basically the same thing we did yesterday. You know how we were making the little rolls? And so we're going to make sure the rolls are going to be pretty consistent thickness-wise and height-wise as we're going along. And yesterday it was really good because we made sure people were moving around. We're going to do that same thing. Put down a few rolls, stop, and then everybody move around, or just take a look back and to see if anybody is higher up, if the rolls are thicker than your rolls, you know, and just make sure you like tap them and be like, you know, your roll's a little thick there. Don't be afraid. I think that's a pretty good thickness, you know, so it's about almost double the thickness of this one. So thinking about this thick. So everybody come walk around and look how thick this is going to be. this is what we're going to be shooting for the outside layer, and we're following along this line because we want the outer layer to be resting on the base and not off of it, otherwise it'll start slumping down. And then always poke your holes in there too as you're going. And remember to overlap onto the next one. So no butting coils. Everything has to go on top of each other. If you have your water handy and if you see any big cracks happening in front of you on the main structure, go ahead and just rub some water on there. Yeah, there we go. See, it has to be kind of nice and moist, you know. The more moist it is, the less chance it's going to start cracking and stuff. So. I came around 9 this morning and uncovered it, and the whole thing was just glistening. You know, it was really nice and moist. No cracks at all, you know. It's been uncovered for about, what, almost an hour now? If you guys remember, just whenever we're doing this, you just want to move around it. You know, you're always wanting to check it out. So as we're going, look for big cracks, look for any cracks, look for changes in shape, slumping. See how it's the wind is drying it now? See, though, that's cool. We're not seeing like big jagged ones though.
We're starting to see cracks though. These weren't here before.
Yeah, see, so that's all the drying process of just now. So the rest of this whole process is a controlled drying process. So as we're going the next couple of weeks, we're gonna have the volunteers set up a schedule, and we're just gonna make a small batch right now, and then that's gonna be applied to this. So we're same thing as the last time. You know, we're gonna still do like a more of a thicker slurry. And if you notice, it's getting hard, you know? Yeah. So we want to get that slurry on now before it gets any more dry. Yeah, it looks pretty good, but let's get some water on it. And let's get another little batch going that we're going to use to kind of patch it up. And then we're going to make a batch of the first plaster of it. Let's get in there. Yeah, this one you usually just use a hoe to mix, you know? So you're just kind of making like a little light plaster. And the finer the material is, the better it is, because you won't have a lot of rocks grabbing your mix, you know.
And so you get that shiny glaze over it.
Yeah. So and then this isn't like a decorative layer or anything. This is just kind of being made to protect our layer that we have now. Yeah, there you go. So if you notice how I'm moving, I'm not really moving my arms. I'm just kind of like slowly letting my back and forth motion mix it, you know. So this one's gonna be really, really wet, like a paste, like Elmer's glue kind of consistency. So we're just getting your mix, and then you're just kind of letting it settle.
It'll take a while for it to all finish.
Pull it up. Then you get a little bit of water, and then if you need to, you can go like that again. See, I'm just kind of gently pulling it up, you know, and see how it's there. It's formed a layer. So that's what we want over the whole thing. We're just gonna want to come around and just kind of slather it on there, nice and gentle, you know, just kind of use your hand. All the material is gonna float right here. Get it against the base, and then just guide it up, you know, one gentle movement.
It's really cool just getting to see like all the different steps and like how much work everyone does. And the best part about it was just being able to work with everybody here and get to know a lot of different people, and you know, being able to use like your hands, your feet, and your whole body, all your muscles and everything. So
Yeah,
that's like really wet.
Like super wet. So it's all mostly on this side. Looks like it's just the orientation. So yeah, so that looks good though. I mean, it's not collapsed in there. There's no giant cracks or anything happening, even though it's wet. Yeah, that's just because then after that we see how the doors. We can start shaping it more out too here. And then we can use a big rasp, you know? They have these ones that have like super giant teeth on there, you know, like a file.
okay.
You can use that when it's dry. You can use that to enlarge the opening inside of there. So it looks good. We'll just keep it as is, and yeah, let me touch this. Oh yeah, see, that's still pretty wet in there too. So yeah, let's. It's all on the north side. We're here at the Colton Garden Naka Life Program bread oven, Pueblo bread oven, and so far we've been keeping an eye on it, pretty much monitoring it for the past 3 weeks or so, and making sure that no big cracks form on the outside. We've been having volunteers come and water it down and kind of patching areas here and there, and that kind of led up to taking the door out. And here is a piece of the original material that we cut out. So this wasn't the actual door, because this whole thing would be about 60 pounds, you know. So this was just kind of there to protect the inside while it dried. So now we took that out, and you can see the layers from the different clay that we did. So we have that first clay layer, which I think is on that one, but then this is the outside insulating layer. So that's out of there, and then one of the volunteers had made a really nice nifty door that fits right in here like that. So at this point we've scraped out all of this material, which is the mold material that forms the interior of the oven. What we're doing is we slowly started pulling the interior mold out. We didn't do it all at once because the clay layer inside was still soaking wet, and when we first cut out the door and pulled it out, the whole material in here, if you grabbed it, you could squeeze water out of it. It was so wet. And what that interior mold is doing is that it's absorbing all the water from the clay layers into itself. So if you leave that in there, pull the door out, it'll help to make sure that the interior doesn't dry too fast. So all that material that you're going to be pulling out is going to be watery, slightly moist, you know, and that's really good, because that means all the water is slowly seeping into there and it's acting like a sponge. So with this kind of material, we didn't want to pull it out too much too fast, because if you pull it all out, the interior clay layer is still moist, and chances are it'll dry out too fast and start cracking and fall down, or it might develop slumping, you know. So what we're doing in the last couple of weeks after opening it up and pulling out the first shovelfuls is that every few days or so, almost every day, it would come and
start scraping it out from the interior, because it's still sticking to the interior of the oven where it's mostly clay. So there's a few tools you can use to scrape out the interior, and one of the easiest ones is a pry bar. You know, it's got an edge, you know, you can pull, and it helps to scrape off this kind of harder dried up clay material. And I've also made a couple of tools out of gourds, which are traditional tools. You know, gourds make really good tools because they're curved, you know, they've got straight edges. So with these, it's just the curve of a gourd. And this one is a scraper basically. So what I did was just kind of filed down all the edges until I made like a scoop here. And what's really cool about clay, I mean a gourd with clay, is that if you use a metal tool like this, the wet clay kind of sticks to it, you know. So after a while you have to kind of pry that all off, you know. And even this is really dry, so it's not coming off with any ease, you know. But with clay tools, you can get them wet and they'll stay wet. So when you scrape off the material, it just flicks right off. So you always have a clean edge to work with, rather than having a big bulky edge that this is going to gouge. You know, it'll leave a bunch of gouges, so it'll make it harder for this to make a straight. And what's cool about gourd tools is that they curve. So if you imagine these working on the inside of the oven and you get a sharp enough edge, it'll form around the edge, you know. So it makes it really cool to be able to follow that curve, you know, instead of gouging out with something sharp. This helps to kind of seal it as it's going around like that too. So in here we dug it out until we've hit the very base of it. We look out for a really white layer, because this earth is a different material from that earth, and if you can see it, it's drying white. So that's the clay in there. So what we do is we dig it out until you hit the very first clay layer, then you stop and slowly start scraping everything else out. So right now it's been a couple of weeks since we started this whole process, and we've hit the inner clay layer and the edge, all around the edge pretty much, so that determines the area inside. And now we're just kind of scraping everything else out of there, and we're slowly seeing white specks in there, and that's the first clay layer, which is a good sign. So now as it's drying, you're just continuously watching for big cracks, like how we watch for the outside of it. Only on the inside, it's more important to keep an eye on it, because that determines if the interior is going to be stable. You know, if you knock it around, take a tap on it, it's pretty solid, you know. And it's really cool because inside of there, when you tap it, it sounds like a drum. Nice hollow sound, which is really cool because that's what you want. So as we look in there, we're looking for big gouges, we're looking for cracks, and then basically you're just getting your gourd scraper, and then you're just pulling it back. And since it's curved, it's really cool because you're forming a curve inside, and then as you're scraping, you're feeling if there's any really large ridges in there. So as I'm scraping, I'm feeling the tool scraping across, and say there was a big ridge like that, this would hit it, you know. So it gives you a good indication of how smooth it is. And if you hit a ridge like that, you just turn your tool around and chip it off, and then you scrape it again and it smooths it. So right now for the next week or so is we're just going to continuously trying to pull as much of the material out and smooth the inside with our gourd tool. And this is all being done dry right now, but as we get more of this material out and it gets harder to do, we'll start wetting the tool and pushing it out, and then we'll wet the back side of it, and then you do the same exact motion, only this time you're using the smoothness of the gourd to smooth out the interior of the oven. So, and plus it makes a really good scoop for this other material. So you get your material, and then you kind of look at it, and every once in a while you'll see kind of wider pieces, and that means you're hitting the interior clay layer. See right here's a nice little... Hello, today we are going to be doing the final stages of the bread oven build we're doing. So as of now, the oven is built, the inside is scraped out, it's drying pretty good. I think this thing is pretty much, I would say, more than 3/4 of the way dry all the way through. And now what we're going to do today is put on the plaster layers. So we'll talk about what this first layer is, what goes on top, and then the different methods of how we apply it, and then the materials we're going to use. So first step I think we're going to do right now is we're going to have somebody take one of these gourd tools and just go around and knock off all of these really rough, rigid pieces. So that's going to be the first step, and then the next step is we'll start sifting sand and then getting everything ready to mix. So plastering is there's a lot of different methods. You can use cement, you can use natural earth plasters, there's lime plasters, you can do a wheat paste plaster. So for our purposes today, we're going to just keep it really traditional, really simple, and use our theme was kind of using everything that we had on site. So we have a lot of leftover material, and we've been doing kind of test patches here and there just to see how the material is reacting, and it's looking really good. So today we're just going to go over everything, smooth everything out, give it a nice little spritz with some water so that the layer can stick, and then apply the plaster layers. And it's nice and windy, it's cloudy today, so everything will dry really well so that we can build up layers of it, and then at the very end we'll add color to it, so using natural pigment dyes. And then you're not like chipping off any big pieces, you're just knocking off so it's smooth, okay? So it's not so if we do this, it'll make it hard, make it easier for the layers to stick to it. If there's like little like projections and stuff like that, then that's where it will start cracking off more. But yeah, we're just kind of knocking off all of those little repair marks that we've been filling in. But this crack coat looks good. That's what this top part is called, a crack coat. See, these gourd tools are cool because they have curves and they fit like against curved surfaces, so you don't have to worry about scraping or pulling off like a big piece. So see how that just like conforms to it. To this sifted material here, and then see how it just it's draining in there really good. That's a good sign. So we'll get a nice little mud patch going here. See, and then your consistency, what we're looking for is not too wet, you know. As we were doing this, we were doing the clay layer, and we were showing like how you can like do a like how a blizzard is, you know, that consistency. So that's kind of what you're looking for, you know. With this stuff, we don't want it to be since it's mostly sand, it's not going to have that same consistency as clay, but see how that's just kind of sticking like that? That's what we're trying to look for, because that's going to help stick on here better, you know. So we're getting sandier and sandier to avoid cracks. And so we'll see from down here, and we'll just kind of trowel it on with your hand. And it's a little dry, so I'm going to make it a little bit wetter. See how it's kind of like caking up and like sticking to itself? So if we have a little bit more water to it, see, I just dip my hand in the water, and then we'll do it over here. See how it's it's smoother? Same amount of pressure, just a little bit more water. So you can see how this was kind of like spackling a little bit. Here, see, I just put water on my hand, and you can smooth it, see? But if you do it right the first time, you just get a nice coat. You know, this is very meditative, you know, this process, because you're like kind of paying attention. It's like you're looking at the big picture, but in the end of this, it's like you're kind of focusing into being more intimate with the materials. You know, you want to see like the consistency of it. You're like kind of just paying attention to what how it reacts to this, you know. Okay, so we got Cutter had a little moist patch here.
But they were kind of like, we'll move the hives and let's see what happens.
Right.
But that doesn't solve our problem.
Start from the bottom, and then you just kind of smoothly use the material.
Right. But I was
Get it, and then kind of overlap your previous one. And I'm not using like a whole lot of pressure to do it. So this layer is, we can get this layer as smooth as possible on there first, and then the next layer will smooth that layer out. And this is just yellow ochre with a little bit of water, well, mostly water and some of our mix there. So it's our slurry mix that we had made up plus yellow ochre, and hopefully it'll turn into a nice kind of a colored paste, you know. So if we use too much of the material, it turns diluted. So what we're gonna do is mostly water and mostly of the color. So we'll see how this comes out, but it looks pretty nice right now. So you can see the color difference from when I added the clay material to my hand as opposed to what it looks like pure in there. So I think we'll just add mostly of the ochre. We'll add most of that as pure, and let's see what it looks like on the oven itself. We chose to do yellow because in a lot of cultures, yellow has significance. According to Carrie, she was saying that the Lakota people, the up north, they use yellow as a color to bring people together. So it represents unity. And to the Hopi, the yellow color represents the direction to the northwest. So there is a few different meanings for the yellow. So usually when colors are associated with the west, it has an association with death, you know, because the west, when you die, we go west into the Grand Canyon again. But a lot of times when you see yellow, it represents strength as well, because you know, since that color, you know, we're traveling towards that. So the yellow color it represents, for, I guess, culture's unity, but also strength. So what's really cool about this project is that we're going to use yellow for the color on the oven part, and I guess what we're hoping for is to impart those spiritual qualities into the oven, you know, so strength, unity, togetherness. So the coloring that we're doing is we're adding that kind of connotation, you know, that idea of using the colors to represent something. So that's why we're having this yellow color on the oven as a representation of unity, of strength, you know. We want our oven to be strong, you know, we want it to last. So hopefully as we're putting on there, you know, we think about those I guess concepts, you know, and we're imparting that into there. So by doing that, we're putting our good thoughts in there, we're putting strength in there, you know, we're bringing things together. And then so when people come and check it out, they're like, wow, it's yellow, why is it yellow? Some people may understand that, but then if we explain it, you know, it's a lot more interesting, because we're not just building a bread oven, we're building something that's going to bring somebody together.